Hey there, and thank you for clicking on my latest cute picture of my adorable Corgi pup, Rosie. I can assure you she appreciates it. So if you've taken any of my courses or watched any of the videos here on my YouTube channel, you know that I typically talk about technologies pertaining to data analysis. SQL, Excel, Python pandas, and so on. But there's one new technology that has absolutely changed the game for data analysts, along with just about anybody else who works with information for a living. And that, of course, is ChatGPT. Or, if you prefer, Claude, Gemini, or any of the other quasi-intelligent chatbots out there right now. And that's why, in this video, I want to talk about my 5 favorite strategies for getting the most out of ChatGPT as an analyst. Now, this sort of thing is often called prompt engineering, but as you'll see, it's really more art than science, and involves a lot of the same skills that it takes to communicate effectively with, well, another human. Which, as it turns out, is a great segue into my first tip. And that tip is to talk to ChatGPT like a personal assistant you just hired. So you can think of ChatGPT as an incredibly knowledgeable, but equally literal-minded personal assistant who lacks a degree of common sense you can take for granted when dealing with people. At least most people. And an assistant who doesn't know anything about you or the problems you're trying to solve except what you tell it. You see, in the AI era, everybody is a manager. So we need to learn to delegate like managers and communicate like managers. That means having a really clear, specific idea about what you want your assistant to do, and then communicating this with equal clarity to your assistant. In my opinion, 80% of what people call prompt engineering is just good critical thinking and communication skills, which are useful most anywhere, by the way. Here's the bottom line. The best practice is to talk to ChatGPT as though you're giving detailed instructions on some task to an assistant or employee, someone who has minimal context on the problem you're trying to solve, via chat or email. And as an added bonus that we don't get when dealing with a real human assistant, chatbots don't have feelings, at least we think, so you don't have to worry about being nice. Although I will say, it really can't hurt to be nice to your friendly neighborhood chatbot, and I personally say please and thank you to ChatGPT all the time, just like my grandma taught me. But then again, it's easy to err on the side of being too nice, which leads me to my next tip. And that is, don't be shy with AI. I came up with that all by myself, by the way, and I'm pretty proud of it. Hopefully it's not too corny. So the thing about prompting chatbots like ChatGPT is that it's not exactly an exact science. And it will often take you several rounds of question and answer exchanges in order to get what you want. But that's totally okay. Don't hesitate to keep at it until you get what you want. Even if you're like me, the kind of guy who won't ask for extra sriracha at a restaurant, even though I love sriracha, just because I hate to ask. Remember, you're not dealing with a human here, so there's no need to be shy. Ask away. And to that, it's equally important to remember that prompt engineering is an iterative process, which is a fancy way of saying you might have to experiment with multiple different approaches to solve your problem. Now, this can sometimes take the form of editing your initial prompt, or one later in the conversation, or even trying a new chat altogether. This sometimes really helps, by the way. Or you could even try a completely different chatbot, like Claude. You probably won't hurt ChatGPT's feelings. The bottom line is, nobody knows exactly how these large language model chatbots even work behind the scenes, even the people who built them. And we're all discovering the best ways to get the most out of them together. So even if you're a shy person like me, don't be shy with AI. Of course, for every point, there's a counterpoint. And my counterpoint here is, don't overdo it. So one sort of underrated aspect of prompting large language models like ChatGPT is that it's easy to cause them to overfit to your prompt by supplying too much information in your request. Too much information, you say? Impossible. Well, that depends. Sure, if you know exactly what you want, and you know all the context required to get to it, go wild. But if you know that much about the problem you're solving, I mean, do you really even need ChatGPT's help at that point? I find it's often the case that when I use ChatGPT, if I'm being honest with myself, I don't know what I don't know, so to speak. And if there's one thing that large language models like ChatGPT are really good at, it's knowing stuff. In these instances, when you're not 100% sure what you want, it can be a good idea to leave your prompts more general and then fine-tune from there. By trying versions of your prompt with less context and/or specificity, you might get good ideas you otherwise wouldn't have thought of. This is especially good for brainstorming. So tying this back to the whole prompting is an iterative process thing, here's the bottom line. Don't over-engineer your prompts, at least from the get-go. Start simple, test and verify your results. After all, you are dealing with large language models, which are notoriously prone to hallucinations, and then layer in more complexity as you go. Okay, so now, taking this prompting tip to its logical conclusion, brings me to my single favorite prompt engineering strategy. Asking ChatGPT to ask you what context it needs to solve your problem. Now, not to keep belaboring my own ignorance, but sometimes I find that even if I have a really clear idea of what it is I'm trying to accomplish when prompting ChatGPT, I can't think of, or simply don't know, all the context and background info that might be helpful in solving that problem. And in that case, the solution is dead simple. Ask ChatGPT to ask me. Now let's go ahead and see what that looks like using an example just about any analyst can relate to. Building a dashboard. So here in ChatGPT, I'll start by asking my question in a pretty straightforward way. Here I'm saying that my company has an ERP system that generates a monthly file containing information about each sale from the previous month, and that my boss wants me to create a monthly dashboard in Excel from this data, and I'm simply asking ChatGPT to advise me how to create this dashboard. So if I go ahead and ask this of ChatGPT, sure enough, I get a pretty thorough and comprehensive step-by-step guide suggesting a whole host of actions I can take to create and even automate that dashboard. ChatGPT even threw in a step here at the end about validating and testing and presenting. Now that was honestly a pretty solid response. And at this point you might be wondering what fault I could possibly find with either that or with the prompt I used to get to that response. Well, the thing is, as thorough as this step-by-step guide seems, it's still pretty generic and high level. These steps could pertain to most any dashboard that anybody might build, as opposed to my specific dashboard. Now, of course, I could have included more context about the specific requirements of the dashboard I'm building. But an even better approach is to ask ChatGPT the exact context it needs to provide me with a detailed roadmap. So to that, I'll edit my original prompt here and replace it with a modified version in which at the end, I ask ChatGPT what information I can provide it that would help it guide me through this process. So now if I submit this modified question, what we get back is a series of detailed questions designed to get all the information from me that ChatGPT needs to help me build the perfect dashboard for my specific situation. Now, I'm not going to make you watch me type the answers to all these questions, but I think you get the idea. You're going to get a much more personalized response now, since ChatGPT will know so much more about your problem, and even more so, know all the things that it needs to know to solve the problem you're trying to solve. Additional context that you very possibly wouldn't have thought to provide it up front. Now, our final prompt engineering strategy today is all about how to tackle truly big problems with ChatGPT. Problems much too big for a single response from any chatbot, any current chatbot that is, to solve. Now, that's not to say that you can't get a complete sort of artifact from a single chatbot response. If all you want, just for example, is a crappy little poem, one prompt and one response is probably all you need. But what if your ambitions are a little grander than that? Maybe you want to, I don't know, write an entire book. Well, if you think ChatGPT, or any chatbot in the present or near future, by the way, is going to write something on that scale in a single go, I've got some disappointing news. Chatbots like ChatGPT can only generate so much text at a time, and the quality of those responses can even tend to degrade the longer they get. So how to get around this so we can write that great novel we've always had an idea for? Or, more realistically, do something that an actual analyst might care about, like building a dashboard? Simple. We ask ChatGPT to build us a roadmap or outline of all the steps needed to build what we're trying to build. If we're trying to write a novel, that might take the form of a detailed outline of all the chapters in the novel. Then we could ask it to create an outline for each of those chapters and then write the actual text for each piece of those outlines. Simple, right? Stephen King, look out. Okay, it's probably not that simple, but that's the general idea. And similarly, if we're trying to create a dashboard, we might ask ChatGPT to generate a step-by-step guide to everything we need to do to create that dashboard from start to finish. Let's see how that might work. So going back to our previous conversation, I'll first answer a few of these questions that ChatGPT asked me. If I answered all of them, that prompt would be way longer than you want to read or I want to write. And as you can see, the presentation is for our sales team. Our sales team loves pie charts. There's no accounting for taste. And our company naturally sells hot sauce, so the logo is a bottle of sriracha. But at the end of this prompt, I'm also asking ChatGPT to generate a detailed outline of all the steps I should take to build this dashboard. So let's see what we get back when we submit this. So scrolling down through this response, not only do we see an incredibly detailed roadmap, we also see the answers to the questions that ChatGPT asked us reflected in this roadmap. For example, the much vilified pie chart is the very first visualization suggested under Step 4, Create Visualizations. Now, while we now have a pretty darn detailed roadmap for how to build this dashboard that we're trying to build, it's still fairly high level relative to the sheer size of the task of building a dashboard. But that brings me to my very favorite thing about this outline approach. And that's that we can keep expanding the pieces of this outline into more detailed content wherever we need that extra detail. Now, there might be some steps in this roadmap where high-level instruction is enough because I have some familiarity with that particular task. But let's say, for example, I'm not terribly familiar with how to create a pie chart in Excel. All I have to do now is reference this specific component of the outline and ask ChatGPT to expand that component into a complete tutorial. And scrolling down to see the response, sure enough, we now have a step-by-step tutorial for creating the exact pie chart we need that was suggested by ChatGPT to include in our sales dashboard. And the crazy thing is, we don't even have to stop here. If any of these steps or sub-steps aren't explained to quite the level of detail that you need, you can always ask ChatGPT to expand those steps to an even greater level of detail and granularity. Okay, so that's about a wrap for this video. Now I'd love to hear about your favorite prompt engineering strategy in the comments. After all, we're all learning this stuff as we go, and you might well have come up with some strategy no one else has yet. Thanks as always for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.